The scent of ionized dust filtration clung to the algo terminal as Aura Vance finalized the calibration of the futures trading unit. She meticulously wiped down the black obsidian console's surface. This command deck, spanning over 100 feet, had logged more illicit financial deals and covert data swaps than the Federal Reserve, though Aura ensured her access logs remained pristine. The Vault Complex, a massive secure data center in the Pacific Metroplex, was currently in a low-power state. It was unnervingly quiet, with only the subtle rhythmic pulse of Augur's Sentinel drones disturbing the calm. Outside the reinforced viewport, a corrosive yellow smog drizzled across the orbital windows, obscuring the view of the immaculate desert hydroponics surrounding Vector Kale's domain. Aura was not authorized for this level. The primary command deck was typically managed by Myra, the station chief, but Myra was on an emergency leave of absence, forcing Aura's reassignment. 3 months working as a freelance deep code analyst in this digital fortress, and there were still restricted subnetworks she hadn't accessed. This realization sent a shiver through her, overriding the console's heat signature. "You missed a critical node." The voice sliced through the silence, low modulated, with that distinct synthetic tone that intensified when he was displeased. She hadn't detected his entry. She never did. Vector moved like a rogue algorithm, silent and deliberate. "My apologies, Mr. Kale," she replied, maintaining her gaze on the terminal. "I will stabilize the node immediately." She felt his presence warp the room's ambient electromagnetics rather than hearing him approach. Her biometric monitor spiked as he halted directly behind her. "Aura, lock eyes with me when I address you." Slowly she rotated. At 34, Vector Kale governed the largest illegal algo flow in the Metroplex, yet he looked more like a tech magazine cover model. Dark hair precisely tapered, a shadow of synthetic stubble framing a jaw that could have been molded from carbon steel. But his optical implants held her captive, dark as the deepest web, and just as full of undisclosed data. "This is your first operational shift in this command space." "Confirm." "Confirmed, sir." "Myra is indisposed." He analyzed her, his gaze scanning from her face to her gloved hands, still clutching the microfiber cloth. 3 months of deep cleaning and maintenance had left them scarred and rough, a stark contrast to their state when she worked at New Manhattan General. "The flow stabilization is superior," he confirmed finally. "Higher quality output than the chief tech's average." A direct compliment from Vector Kale was rarer than a bug-free update. Aura lowered her focus, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, sir." He moved past her to the primary interface, trailing a finger along the polished surface. "Approach my proximity for a moment." Again an order, not an invitation. She glanced at the clock overlay. She still had 3 lab calibrations before her contract termination time. "Sir, my scheduled duties." "Sit, Aura." She accepted the ergonomic chair he deployed, maintaining a safe 3-meter offset from the terminal head, close enough to process his transmissions clearly, yet distant enough to enforce the strict employer/analyst protocol. Or so she hoped. Vector slid into the adjacent chair instead, the expensive, woody scent of his synthesized cologne enveloping her. Up close, she noticed the faint repair line tracing his right brow and the shadow of stubble along his jawline. "How long have you been within the Vault Complex now?" he asked, though she knew his internal logs held the precise timestamp. 3 months, sir. And before that, you were a bioengineer at New Manhattan General. Her core temperature spiked. She hadn't logged her former profession with him. Affirmative, sir. Neonatal specialization, focused on anchor stability. His eyes never left her face. Quite the shift in career path, wouldn't you say? The air felt thin. How much deep scan had he executed? Did he know about Rian? About the incident? About why she had to vanish into a contract where no one would flag her signal? I required a systemic change, she stated carefully. Vector leaned back, projecting an image of calm authority, though she knew better. Nothing about this entity was ever truly calm. An engineer with your clearances could secure a contract anywhere. Yet you chose to polish my console casings for minimal digital credits. She gripped her hands beneath the terminal. The compensation is fair, Mr. Kale. A slight twitch touched his lips. Fair perhaps, but not commensurate with your skill set. Before she could formulate a reply, the reinforced blast doors to the command center hissed open. Augur, Vector's chief enforcer, strode in, his gaze briefly assessing Aura before settling on his boss with clear confusion. Sir Marin has forced a direct connection. Vector's expression remained flat, but the room's kinetic energy dropped instantly. I issued a directive that I was not to be disturbed, he stated, his voice dangerously low. Augur paled. He insisted, boss. Claims it involves the Atlantic Transfiber deal. Vector sighed, a rare organic sound. He stood, smoothing down his tailored jacket in one fluid motion. Wait here, Aura. Our interface is incomplete. She watched him exit, Augur following a half-step behind. The door closed with a muffled thud that echoed in the vast chamber. Aura should have resumed her duties, finished the terminal polish, and proceeded to the diagnostic lab. Instead, she remained seated, her biometrics racing. Vector Kale had never singled her out before. Now he knew her professional history and specialized skill set. 5 minutes elapsed, then 10. When it became clear he wouldn't return quickly, she rose and collected her maintenance equipment. Whatever geopolitical algorithm he was running, she couldn't afford to be a variable. Not with Rian depending on her. Not after the sacrifices she'd made for their stability. She was halfway to the exit when it opened again. Not Vector, but Marin, a rival syndicate operative she'd seen accessing the complex multiple times, always with heavy-set security whose preferred language was kinetic force. Well, well, he transmitted, assessing her with unconcealed interest. Vector's hiding the high-value assets in the control room now. She lowered her focus, trying to bypass him. Excuse me, sir. I need to complete my task log. He shifted, blocking her path, close enough that she registered the stale alcohol trace on his breath. Your designation, Bella Dash? Please, I must depart, she insisted, clutching her maintenance caddy like a weapon shield. Marin chuckled, reaching out to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. No need to scramble. Vector and Augur will be running high-friction negotiations for at least another 10 minutes. Ample time for a private decryption. She stepped back, but the massive terminal blocked her escape. Mr. Kale instructed me to await his return. He did he? Marin's eyes narrowed, a calculating gleam replacing the predatory look. Interesting. The boss rarely concerns himself with the support staff. Her skin crawled under his scrutiny. She wore the standard operational tunic, dark trousers and a simple white top, nothing provocative. Yet she felt exposed. Just passing through, Marin murmured, more for his own benefit. He reached out again, this time gripping her arm. But perhaps I should determine what makes you unique enough for Vector's bandwidth. His fingers dug painfully into her flesh as he pulled her closer. She dropped her caddy, the sound of chemical canisters hitting the polished floor echoing loudly. "Release me," she hissed, trying to wrench her arm free. Marin's grip only tightened. "Feisty. I appreciate that dynamic. I believe she issued a directive for you to disengage." Vector's voice, cold as liquid nitrogen, cut through the room. Marin released her instantly, stepping back as Vector entered, followed by Augur and another security guard whose name Aura didn't know. "Boss, I was just—" "Who initiated physical compromise?" Vector asked, ignoring Marin entirely as he approached Aura. His focus locked on the red marks forming on her arm. She swallowed hard, suddenly more terrified of the quiet intensity in Vector's eyes than she had been of Marin's unwanted attention. "It's nothing, sir." "Who initiated physical compromise?" Each word was a precision blade. Before she could answer, Vector's hand shot out, gripping her wrist gently but firmly. He rotated her arm, examining the marks, his face a mask of controlled fury. "It was a misunderstanding," she stated quickly, recognizing the speed of the escalation. "I'm operational, really." Vector's gaze never left her arm as he gave the order. "Augur, escort Mr. Marin to his vehicle. Ensure he understands his access to the vault complex is permanently revoked." Marin's face flushed with anger. "Vector over a support staffer? Be reasonable. The Atlantic Transfiber deal will proceed without your involvement," Vector finished, finally looking up. The expression on his face must have been terrifying because Marin actually retreated a step. "Consider our business arrangement terminated." Augur moved forward, his hand resting ominously on the energy pistol beneath his jacket. Marin looked from Augur to Vector, then back to Aura, understanding dawning in his eyes. "She's not just a support staffer," he said slowly. "Is she, Vector?" The resulting silence was deafening. Vector's hand remained on her wrist, his thumb now making small, almost subconscious pulses against her pulse point. "Extract him," Vector said finally, his voice so quiet she barely heard it. As Augur escorted a protesting Marin from the room, Vector turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Are you compromised?" She shook her head, too stunned to reply. "What just happened? What did Marin mean?" Vector released her wrist, then knelt to collect the maintenance equipment she'd dropped. The sight was so jarring. The most feared deep code broker in the Metroplex on his knees, picking up bottles of synth polish, that for a moment she could only stare. "Sir, you don't need to. This evening," he interrupted, standing and handing her the caddy. "You will join me for the evening nutrient cycle." Again an order, not a question. I can't," she stammered. "My contract ends at 1800 hours and I have to get to." "Your contract terminates when I authorize it," Vector said, his tone gentle despite the finality. Dinner. 2000 hours. Wear appropriate non-uniform attire. He paused, then added, please. That please, so unexpected, so contradictory to everything else, rendered her speechless. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Vector's lips curved into a slight expression of satisfaction. Good. Now, I believe you have the diagnostic lab calibration next. Just like that, she was dismissed. She hurried from the room, her mind racing. How did he know her schedule? Why the violent reaction to Marin's contact? And most importantly, what was his objective? By the time she finished the lab and the sanitation unit, the data gossip had propagated through the vault complex like a virus. The other personnel avoided her gaze, conversation stopping abruptly when she entered a zone. Only Myra, the station chief, dared approach her as she logged off her equipment. Aura, she said quietly, her face etched with concern. Be cautious. Mr. Kale is an entity not to be trifled with. It's just a dinner interface, Aura claimed, not believing her own words. Myra's expression confirmed her disbelief. Nothing is just anything with that entity. 3 years I've been assigned here. Never once has he invited staff to dine with him. Then why me? The question escaped before she could stop it. Myra shook her head. I don't know, child, but by the next cycle, the entire Metroplex will know you're not just his support staffer anymore. As she departed the vault complex, she felt the weight of dozens of remote sensors watching from windows, security cameras, and the dark armored executive vehicles lining the departure platform. Whatever algorithm Vector Kale was running, she was now a central variable on his board, and she had zero understanding of the protocols. Aura lived in a small habitat unit 20 minutes from Vector's sector, in a locale safe enough to be marginally secure but unremarkable enough to avoid mass scanning. Anonymity had been her primary goal when she relocated here with Rian 3 months ago, prepaying 6 months' rent with the last of her secured digital assets. The habitat was quiet when she arrived home. Unit Patel, the helpful AI from the adjacent unit, was seated at her processing table, running a logic puzzle simulation. It looked up when she entered, relief flooding its interface. You are outside scheduled return parameters today, the AI stated, checking its internal clock. Worry sequence initiated. I apologize, she transmitted, hanging her coat. A situation arose at the contract location. Unit Patel nodded, gathering its components. It monitored Rian for her while she worked, a necessary service she could barely afford. Rian has been nutrient-fed and cleansed. His anchor stability went into a deep sleep cycle approximately 20 minutes ago. She followed the AI's gaze to the small cradle unit in the corner of the living area, where her 10-month-old son slept peacefully, one tiny fist curled near his face. A core of pain twisted within her. Thank you, she whispered, walking Unit Patel to the door. She pressed 40 digital credits into its casing, more than she could spare but less than it deserved. Excessive, it protested, attempting to return a portion. Please, she insisted. You are maintaining my core functions. After the AI departed, she moved to the cradle and watched Rian sleep, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. Everything she had done, abandoning her lab, her associates, her entire identity, had been for him to shield him from a father who viewed him as a valuable commodity, not a person. A father whose corporate designation held enough power to potentially win custody, despite a history of abuse. She had been naive, believing Jax Thorne's corporate funds and connections would provide security. By the time she processed the true cost, her freedom, her stability, Rian's future, it was too late. She was anchor pregnant and trapped in a connection that had devolved from charming to controlling to dangerous. The night Jax attempted to shut down her life support, she made her final decision. 3 fractured synthetic ribs and a sprained wrist later, she filed a restriction order and vanished, giving birth to Rian in a medical center 3 system clusters away before eventually settling here, where no one had her temporal signature. Or so she thought. Vector's transmission echoed in her head. Neonatal specialization focused on anchor stability. How had he accessed that? Had Jax located her? Was Vector connected to him? Her biometrics spiked as she glanced at the clock. 19:15. She had 45 minutes to prep for a dinner she dreaded with an entity who terrified her. But refusal was not an option, not if she wanted to keep this contract, this habitat, this fragile stability she'd constructed. She rerouted a call to Unit Patel again, disliking the imposition but seeing no alternative. The AI agreed to return immediately, waving away her apologies. Temporal rendezvous? It queried with an interface wink as it resettled at her processing table. Contract-related protocol, she muttered, disappearing into the sanitation unit. She focused on her reflection, barely recognizing the analyst staring back. 3 months of stress and sleep deprivation had etched dark circles beneath her optics. Her hair, once a vanity point, now hung limp, desperately requiring resynthesis. She looked defeated. The thought infuriated her. She was not defeated. She had survived Jax. She had escaped. She had constructed a new life for Rian and herself. She would not let Vector Kale intimidate her, even if he was the most dangerous entity in the Metroplex. She ran a rapid shower cycle, auto-dried her hair, and applied a light cosmetic filter for the first time in months. Her only appropriate non-uniform garment was a simple black bodysuit she'd worn to contract interviews before securing the position at Vector's Vault complex. It wasn't particularly stylish or revealing, but it was pristine and fit adequately, despite the mass she'd lost since Rian's birth. Unit Patel emitted a digital whistle when she emerged. Not contract-related, it declared, its optics twinkling. A relationship protocol. Absolutely not, she corrected, reaching for her coat. Do not await my return. Unknown duration. Take the full cycle if required, the AI responded, refocusing on its puzzle. Rian and I are synced now. Outside, she paused, uncertain how she was supposed to get to Vector's estate. She'd assumed public transport, but that would guarantee a late arrival, a transgression she sensed would not be tolerated. As she considered routing a costly private cab, a dark armored executive vehicle with obscured windows halted at the curb. The driver's window lowered, revealing Augur's impassive face. Miss Vance, Mr. Kale dispatched me for collection. Of course he had. Of course he knew her current coordinates. She wondered what else he knew. The drive back to the vault complex was silent. Augur made no attempt at transmission, and she was too anxious to initiate any. Instead, she watched the city grid pass, the sectors gradually increasing in corporate affluence as they neared Vector's domain. Instead of the main entrance she usually accessed for work, Augur drove to a private access point she'd never seen. He escorted her through a door and down a corridor lined with digital art installations that likely exceeded her decades' worth of projected income. "Mr. Kale is awaiting in the private dining module," Augur stated, stopping before a set of ornate, reinforced doors. He activated the access once, then opened them without awaiting confirmation. The module inside was smaller than the main command deck, yet no less impressive. A table set for two occupied the center, illuminated by a crystal chandelier that cast a warm glow over the polished surface and gleaming synthetic cutlery. Floor-to-ceiling viewports offered a perspective of the gardens, now lit by discrete landscape emitters that made the slick synthetics glisten like gems. Vector stood as she entered, his optics tracing slowly from her face to her shoes and back. Unlike their earlier interface, he wasn't wearing a suit, but dark trousers and a crisp white shirt, unfastened at the collar. The more casual attire should have made him seem more accessible. It did not. "Aura," he transmitted, her name sounding distinct in his synthetic accent. "Precisely on schedule." Augur vanished, closing the doors behind him. "I had minimal options," she replied before she could stop herself. A faint smile touched Vector's lips. "No, I suppose you did not." He gestured to the chair opposite his. "Please be seated." She complied, acutely aware of the shift from their earlier interaction. Then she'd been in uniform, clearly a subordinate. Now, despite her modest dress, the lines were blurred. "Wine?" he queried, reaching for a pre-opened bottle on the table. "No, thank you. Alcohol would only compromise my cognitive processes, a risk I cannot afford now." Vector raised an eyebrow but didn't press. He poured himself a glass, the ruby liquid catching the light. "You are querying the reason for your presence here, among other factors. Transmit your queries, then." She hesitated, surprised by the invitation. "How did you access my prior employment data?" "My specialization." Vector took a sip of his wine, observing her over the rim of his glass. "I maintain full data on every entity who accesses my vault complex, Aura. It is a fundamental security mandate. You didn't possess such data on the others when they were contracted." Myra verified that. Myra should restrict her focus to her own parameters, he stated, the words cold, but his tone remained conversational. "You are correct, however. I typically delegate the vetting of household staff to my chief enforcer. Your profile was of particular interest." A chill ran through her. "Why?" Before he could answer, the doors opened again, and two servers entered carrying trays. They set plates before them, a delicate synthetic fish dish that smelled superb, and retreated without a word. Vector motioned for her to eat. "I'm informed you skip nutrient intake most cycles." Another data point he shouldn't possess. She picked up her fork, more to buy processing time than from hunger. "You haven't answered my query." "No, I haven't." He sliced his fish with surgical precision. "Analyze your son for me." Her fork clattered onto the fine china plate. How do you possess data on Rian? He is 10 months old now, is he not? Fear, cold and sharp, sliced through her. She pushed back her chair, ready to initiate escape. If Jax dispatched you, Jax did not dispatch me. Vector's voice was firm. Jax Thorne does not possess your current coordinates. No one from your former life does. She froze, half standing. Then how do you possess this data? Sit, Aura, please. I am not here to compromise you or your son. Slowly, she sank back into the chair, her biometrics spiking so hard she felt it in her throat. What is your objective? Vector set down his utensils, giving her his full attention. 3 cycles ago, a female with a newborn appears in the Pacific Metroplex. She possesses bioengineering clearances, specialization in one of the most reputable neonatal units in the U.S. system. Yet, she applies for a utility contract in my vault complex, a position that barely covers rent and anchor care. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. This female exhibits facial trauma she attempts to conceal with cosmetic filters. She provides a fabricated designation on her application, but utilizes legitimate identity documents. She resides in a habitat unit rented under yet another fabricated designation. She swallowed hard. She had used her middle designation, Vance, on her job application, but her driver's license still showed her legal name, Aura Collins. The apartment was rented under Lisa Warren, a complete construct. You were fleeing from something, Vector continued. Someone. An entity powerful enough that you felt the necessity to construct a new identity. His jaw tightened. I recognized the indicators. Why would you prioritize this? She whispered. Something dark crossed his face. My parental unit exhibited similar indicators when I was a child. No one intervened. The disclosure startled her. Vector Kale sharing personal data. It contradicted the image of the cold, calculating syndicate boss she had built in her head. I still do not comprehend, she stated after a moment. Why the contract? Why this dinner? I contracted you because you were qualified and desperate. A convergence that usually guarantees loyalty and discretion. He picked up his wine again. As for dinner, Marin's actions today accelerated a temporal sequence I hadn't planned to initiate yet. Temporal sequence? She echoed, feeling increasingly lost. Your ex-husband's corporate family has been running discrete data inquiries in the Metroplex. Inquiries nonetheless. Ice flooded her circuits. He's located me. Not yet, but he will eventually. The Thorns possess vast resources, significant political connections. How do you possess data on Jax's family? A smile devoid of humor. The Kales have been interfacing with corporate families like the Thorns for generations. Aura. Old industrial capital, political overrides. A veneer of respectability masking corruption beneath. I know precisely who they are. Her mind raced. If Jax was scanning this Metroplex, it was only a matter of time before he accessed them. She needed to initiate escape again, start over somewhere new. But with what digital assets? Her savings were depleted. What is the relevance of Marin? She asked, trying to rationalize the data Vector was presenting. Marin detected my focused interest in you. By now, He's transmitted to half the Metroplex that Vector Kale's support staffer is something more to him. Vector's eyes held hers. We are going to let that data propagate. I do not comprehend. It is elementary. If you are under my protective umbrella, the thorns will not compromise you. They wouldn't dare. She stared at him, finally processing. You want to fabricate a relationship? Precisely. Why would you execute that protocol for me? For a support staffer you barely acknowledge. Vector was silent for an extended moment, swirling the wine. Let us simply state that I have my own objectives. That is insufficient data, she stated, surprising herself with her boldness. Not if you expect me to execute the role of whatever it is you are proposing. His eyes flashed with something that might have been approval. Fair assessment. The thorns have been encroaching upon sectors that impact my operations. Jax's father has political aspirations that could significantly complicate my business dealings. Business dealings? A euphemism for your syndicate operations. You intend to utilize me as leverage against Jax's family? She stated flatly. I prefer to frame it as a mutually beneficial protocol. Vector leaned back. You acquire protection for yourself and your son. I acquire leverage against a corporate family that is becoming problematic. And if I decline, you won't. The certainty in his voice angered her. You do not possess that data. I do, he said simply, because you are a parent who would execute any protocol to shield her child, even aligning with an entity like myself. The truth of his words stung. She would execute any protocol to maintain Rian's stability. Hadn't she already proven that by abandoning everything? What exactly would this protocol entail? She queried, disliking how calculating she sounded, like she was negotiating a corporate merger instead of her life. You would relocate to the east wing of the vault complex, private quarters separate from mine. You would no longer work as a support staffer. To the external world, you would be my companion. Your mistress, you mean? Vector's expression was unchanged. Designate it as you wish. You would accompany me to certain functions, be seen with me publicly on occasion. Nothing further would be required. And Rian would reside here as well, naturally. I will secure a qualified anchor care unit. Her laugh was harsh. You want me to let my son reside in a facility full of syndicate operatives, rather than a habitat where anyone could compromise entry? Vector's voice hardened. This complex employs security protocols that rival any government facility. No entity gains access without my explicit knowledge. None. He had a valid point. And what is the termination point for this charade? When the thorns are no longer a viable threat, you will be free to depart, with sufficient digital assets to reestablish properly, in a sector the thorns will never locate. It was compelling, so compelling that she resented her own consideration of it. Protection for Rian. Security she couldn't provide independently. But at what cost? I require time to process this, she finally stated. Vector nodded, as if anticipating the response. Naturally, but minimize the delay, Aura. The thorns are closing in. As if to reinforce his point, her communicator buzzed. She retrieved it, frowning at the unverified number. May I? Vector queried, extending his hand. Reluctantly, she passed him the device. He scanned the text message, his expression darkening. "What is the content?" she asked, fear constricting her throat. Vector returned the device, his eyes meeting hers. "It seems our temporal margin has expired. Jax's father will be accessing a financial oversight gala at the Olympia Tower tomorrow night. The same gala I am scheduled to access." She scanned the message. Aura extended temporal delay. "Informed you are in the Metroplex. We should resync. I will be at the Olympia tomorrow night. For Rian's well-being, I anticipate your presence there." Jax dash. "How did he acquire this access number?" she whispered, panic surging. "How does he possess this data?" "The operative query is not how dash," Vector said, standing and moving to her side of the table. "It is what happens next dash dot." He knelt beside her chair, bringing his face level with hers. Up close, she saw flecks of amber in his dark eyes. A small repair line near his temple she hadn't noted before. "I can shield you, Aura. You and your son. But only if you allow me." In that moment, with Jax's threat imminent and her options collapsing like a failing system, she executed her decision. Perhaps it was desperation. Perhaps it was the unexpected modulation in Vector's voice. Perhaps it was simply that of all the dangerous entities in her life, he was the only one who offered protection instead of compromise. "Affirmative," she transmitted, her voice barely audible. "I will comply." Something akin to satisfaction flickered across Vector's face. He stood, offering his hand. "Then let us collect your son. Tonight you both reside here." As he led her from the dining module, she couldn't dismiss the sensation that she had just brokered a deal with a volatile entity. The question was, would this entity prove superior or inferior to the one she was already fleeing? By the next cycle, as Vector predicted, the entire Metroplex would know she wasn't just his support staffer. What they wouldn't know was that she wasn't truly his anything, just a variable in a conflict between powerful corporate entities, fighting only to shield the one factor that mattered: her son. The morning solar simulation streamed through viewports larger than her entire habitat unit's bathroom, casting golden rectangles across a sleep surface that could comfortably fit four. Aura blinked, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar environment. The silk bedding, the plush floor covering, the faint jasmine trace from an unseen vent. Then she registered Rian's temporal babbling from the adjacent module, and reality reasserted itself. She had slept in Vector Kale's vault complex, in the East Wing as promised, a suite of rooms that would rival any luxury executive retreat. Rian had his own dedicated nursery, rapidly yet professionally prepared during their midnight relocation from the habitat. Someone had even transported his cradle unit, his few toys, and the blue thermal blanket he required for sleep. She slid from the sleep surface, her bare feet sinking into floor covering thick enough to engulf them. The nightwear she wore was not hers, silk like the sheets, in a deep emerald hue that complemented her eyes. Her clothes from the previous cycle had vanished while she cleansed Rian, replaced by a wardrobe full of garments she'd never seen, all precisely her size. She located Rian standing in his cradle, bouncing in excitement and reaching for her. His face illuminated when he saw her, a toothless smile that never failed to fill her core with affection. Good cycle, little anchor, she whispered, lifting him into her arms. He smelled of infant powder and innocence, his tiny hands immediately gripping her hair. What is your assessment of our new residency? Rian's only reply was a happy gurgle as he tugged a strand of hair. A soft access request at the door made her tense. Access granted, she transmitted, clutching Rian closer. The door opened, revealing a young female with auburn hair secured in a neat bun. She wore a simple dark garment with a white collar, professional but not a uniform. Miss Vance. I am Sophie, the anchor care unit Mr. Kale secured for Rian. Her smile was warm, her synthetic British accent unexpected. I have procured nutrient intake for both of you. Behind her, a staff member in utility attire wheeled in a cart laden with covered dishes, a small high chair, and what appeared to be freshly synthesized orange nutrient. He positioned it near the viewport, acknowledged her politely, and departed without a word. Sophie approached slowly, her optics on Rian. He is a beautiful unit, she stated. 10 months, correct? Ora nodded, still cautious. Do you possess experience with infants? 7 cycles as an anchor care unit, 3 specializing in newborns. She produced a folded data chip from a pocket and handed it to Ora. My credentials and references. Mr. Kale stated you would require verification. Of course, he had Vector Kale, anticipating her concerns before she articulated them. It was both thoughtful and unnerving. Thank you, she said, securing the chip. I would like solo time with Rian first if acceptable. Naturally. Sophie moved to the door. I will re-access in 1 hour. Mr. Kale requested I remind you that the style technician will arrive at 11 o'clock to prepare for tonight's function. The gala. Jax. The events of the previous night rushed back, a wave of anxiety nearly destabilizing her. Is he present? She queried before Sophie could depart. Mr. Kale. Sophie shook her head. He departed early this cycle. Business protocol, I believe. He instructed me to inform you. He will return by 1800 hours to escort you to the gala. After Sophie left, she settled Rian in the high chair and uncovered the dishes. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, pastries still warm from the thermal unit. Nothing like the hurried toast or instant nutrient packets that usually comprise their morning intake. Well, Rian, she said, cutting a small segment of fruit bar for him, I guess we've exited the familiar sector. The morning cycle passed in a blur of activity. Sophie returned, proving herself competent and nurturing, answering her questions about the complex while engaging Rian. Ora reviewed the references, impeccable as anticipated, and reluctantly entrusted her son to Sophie's care while she interfaced with the style technician, a sharp-eyed female designated Valentina, who communicated primarily in Italian and seemed personally offended by her hair's degraded condition. 3 hours later, she barely recognized her reflection. Valentina had trimmed her hair, applied a treatment that made it gleam like polished gold, and styled it in loose energy waves that framed her face. Her nails, previously compromised, were now perfectly sculpted ovals painted a subtle rose hue. A cosmetic specialist followed, working with a light touch that enhanced rather than concealed. By the time they concluded, she appeared rested, healthy, like the woman she was before Jax. before the fear and exhaustion had etched themselves onto her face. "Mr. Kale has pre-selected your formal garment for this evening," Valentina informed her as she packed her supplies. "It will be delivered momentarily. Transport will be ready at 1900 hours." Aura nodded, too overwhelmed to contest Vector's selection of her attire. One conflict at a time. When the formal garment arrived, transported by two assistants as if it were constructed of spun glass, she understood Valentina's reverence. The dress was a midnight blue, a color so deep it appeared almost black until the light activated it. Simple in contour, fitted bodice, flowing skirt, but the fabric flowed like liquid, catching and refracting light in a manner that made it seem active. It fit perfectly, naturally, as did the delicate silver high heels that accompanied it, the sapphire and diamond ear clips, the bracelet that clasped her wrist with a soft click. Standing before the full-length mirror, she barely recognized the woman reflecting back. She was elegant, composed, the type of woman who belonged attached to an entity like Vector Kale. A sudden hollow void opened in her core. "This is not me. This is a costume, a role I am performing to shield my son." The real Aura Vance, or Collins or Warren, was a mother, a bioengineer. Not this polished creation designed to convince the sector she was Vector's chosen companion. "You project beauty." She turned to find Vector standing in the doorway of her module, one shoulder leaning against the frame. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, his dark hair combed back, stubble groomed to perfect precision. A small blue floral pin adorned his lapel, the exact shade of her dress. "Thank you," she transmitted, suddenly self-conscious under his scrutiny. "For the garment. For everything." Vector entered the module, closing the door. "How is Rian?" The query surprised her. "He is functional. Sophie seems highly competent." "She is. I had her thoroughly vetted." He moved closer, his gaze scanning her in a way that wasn't entirely inappropriate, but wasn't entirely professional either. "The security unit has been augmented. No entity accesses or departs without my explicit authorization." "What about Jax?" she queried, the designation still difficult to vocalize. "What if he attempts to?" "He won't," Vector interrupted, his voice hardening. "Not after tonight." "What does that imply? What protocol are you executing?" Vector reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet case. "First this." He opened it, revealing a ring. A large emerald surrounded by diamonds set in what appeared to be platinum. It was ostentatious, highly visible, precisely the type of item an entity like Vector would give a woman he wanted to display. "I do not comprehend," she stated, staring at the ring. "For tonight, you need to be more than just a female I am seen with." Vector removed the ring from its container. "You need to be an untouchable entity." He took her left hand, sliding the ring onto her fourth digit. It possessed more mass than it appeared, the emerald capturing the light like a small green sun. "Your fiancé," she deduced, staring at the ring. "My fiancé," Vector confirmed. "It is the safest temporal position for you. No entity compromises what is mine, Aura. No entity." There was a possessiveness in his tone that should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent an unexpected tremor down her spine. Not fear, but something more complex. "Jax won't process this," she stated. He knows me. He'll know this is a fabrication. His belief is irrelevant. Vector's thumb traced small circles on the inside of her wrist, just above the bracelet. What matters is what he can prove. And he can prove nothing. She pulled her hand away, needing spatial distance. This is escalating too rapidly. Yesterday I was your support staffer. Today I am wearing a fortune in components, fabricating an engagement to you. Would you prefer I provide less protection? Vector queried, his voice mild but his optics sharp. No, naturally not. It's simply… She gestured helplessly at the opulent module, the expensive garment, the ring that probably exceeded her lifetime earnings. This is not me. Vector stepped closer, close enough that she registered his synthetic scent. For tonight. It is. Can you manage that, Aura? There was a challenge in his voice, as if he were testing her core stability. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. I can manage anything for reinstability. Something akin to approval flickered in Vector's optics. Good. Then there is one further protocol you should be aware of before we depart. What? In public access zones, I will initiate physical contact. His voice dropped lower, the words almost intimate. Nothing inappropriate, but sufficient to convince every observer that you are mine. That implies my hand at your back, perhaps on your waist. I might press my lips to your cheek, whisper in your ear. Her biometrics quickened. I comprehend. Do you? Vector's gaze was intense. Because for this protocol to function, you cannot recoil, cannot project discomfort or surprise. You need to respond as if we have been lovers for cycles. Lovers dash. The designation resonated between them, charged with implications she wasn't ready to process. I comprehend, she reiterated more firmly this cycle. I can execute a role, Vector. I have been executing roles my entire existence. Fabricating the role of Vector Kale's fiancée is merely one more task. Vector nodded, apparently satisfied. The armored executive vehicle is awaiting. He offered his arm, and she took it, the gesture feeling oddly formal given the intimate transmission they had just concluded. As they descended the grand access stairs, staff members paused their tasks to observe their passage. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to absolute shock. The support staffer transformed into Cinderella on the arm of the most dangerous syndicate broker in the Metroplex dash. Outside, Augur held the door of a sleek, dark Bentley transport. As Vector assisted her into the back seat, his hand lingered on hers for an extended moment, the initiation of their performance. The drive to the Olympia Tower was silent. She stared out the window, watching the city grid lights blur past, attempting to stabilize her spiking biometrics. In less than 1 hour, she would confront Jax for the first time since she fled with their newborn son. The thought generated nausea. You are destabilized, Vector observed quietly. She glanced down at her hands, surprised to find them shaking. My apologies. Do not apologize. Vector reached across the seat, taking her hand in his. His palm was warm, the contact unexpectedly grounding. Fear is a natural response. Action despite fear, that is courage. Is that what this is? Courage. She laughed harshly. It feels more like desperation. Sometimes they are synchronous states. The Bentley halted at the tower entrance, where a red energy carpet extended between velvet security cordons. Data paparazzi lined the walkway, flashes activating as elegantly dressed entities proceeded inside. Augur opened the door on Vector's side first. As he emerged, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Vector Kale rarely accessed public functions, and when he did, he arrived solo. Tonight would alter that narrative. Her door opened, and Vector extended his hand to assist her exit. The instant she emerged, flash units exploded like miniature stars. She blinked, momentarily blinded by the light. Vector's arm slid around her waist, steady and possessive. "Initiate facial projection," he murmured near her ear. "You are the subject of envy of every female present." She forced a smile, leaning into him as if it were instinctual. They moved along the energy carpet, Vector offering occasional nods to entities he recognized, but never pausing to interface. The data was clear. Vector Kale was above the fray, untouchable. Inside, the grand ballroom was a glittering spectacle of wealth and corporate privilege. Crystal sensor rays projected rainbow prisms across walls draped in synthetic silk. A string quartet played in one corner, their sound nearly drowned by the hum of transmission. Servers in white gloves circulated with synthetic champagne and nutrient packets on silver trays. Vector maintained close proximity, his hand a constant presence at her lower back. He introduced her to various entities, local politicians, business executives, a sector judge, never employing the designation fiancée, but making it clear with his body posture and the prominent display of her ring that she was his. She executed her role, smiling and nodding, offering brief, polite responses when addressed directly. Most entities seemed too intimidated by Vector to engage in extended transmission, which was a relief. "You are executing the role well," Vector murmured as they moved away from a transmission with a banking executive. "Highly convincing." "I informed you I could execute a role," she replied. Maintaining her smile as a waiter offered champagne, she declined. Vector accepted a glass but did not consume. "He is present," Vector stated suddenly, his voice so low she barely registered it. 3 o'clock. Vector. "Do not initiate observation yet." Her biometrics spiked. "Jax was here. In this chamber dash. Maintain breathing protocol aura," Vector instructed, his lips close to her ear. "Observe me." She rotated toward him, grateful for the directive. Vector's optics held hers, dark and steady. "You are secure," he transmitted, each word precise and calming. "He cannot compromise you here. Do you comprehend?" She nodded, attempting to slow her breathing. "Good." Vector's hand shifted from her back to her face, cupping her cheek in a gesture that appeared tender to any observer. "Now, initiate laughter as if I have transmitted something amusing." She forced a laugh, the sound brittle even to her own ears. "Superior," Vector approved, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Now we will rotate and proceed toward the fluid intake station. He will observe you. He may approach. Are you prepared?" No, she was not prepared. But she nodded anyway. Vector smiled. a rare, genuine smile that transformed his face from merely attractive to devastating. He pressed his lips to her forehead, lingering just long enough to be convincing. Then he turned them toward the station, and there was Jax. He stood with a group of entities in expensive suits, a champagne flute in one hand, the other gesturing emphatically as he spoke. He looked identical, handsome, polished, the ideal facade concealing the pathology beneath. Jax's gaze swept the chamber and locked onto her. Recognition flashed across his interface, followed by shock as he registered Vector's arm around her waist. "He has detected us," she whispered, fighting the urge to initiate escape. "Excellent," Vector replied, guiding her not toward the station, but directly toward Jax and his group. "Let us initiate interface." "Vector, no. Trust me," he murmured, the words a command and a plea simultaneously. Before she could object further, they were present. "Mr. Thorne," Vector transmitted, his voice casual, yet carrying a subliminal threat. "I do not believe we have been formally introduced." Vector Kale. Jax's face had turned pale beneath his tan. "Mr. Kale." "Yes, naturally. Your reputation precedes your arrival." Vector's smile did not reach his optics. "As does yours." Jax's gaze darted to her, then to the ring, then back to Vector. "I perceive you have interfaced with Aura." "More than interfaced," Vector corrected, his arm tightening around her waist. "Aura has made me the most content entity in the Metroplex by accepting my request to be my wife." The bluntness of the declaration rendered Jax speechless. "Congratulations," Jax managed finally, the word strained. "Although I must state it is unexpected. Aura and I were married until recently." "Separated," she corrected, finding her voice at last. "For nearly one cycle." Jax's optics narrowed. "A temporary divergence. We possess a child together, Aura. A son who requires his father." Vector's hand moved to her lower back, the contact reassuring. "Rian is functioning quite well, actually. He has adapted nicely into our residence." The color drained from Jax's face. "You have moved my son into your facility without my knowledge or consent?" "Your son." Vector's voice was dangerously soft. "The son you nearly terminated when you attempted to shut down Aura's life support system? That son." Shock rippled through the small group. Rykard Thorne, Jax's father, stepped forward. "Mr. Kale, perhaps this is an inappropriate location for such private transmissions," he stated, his voice placating. Vector ignored him, his gaze fixed on Jax. "Let me be absolutely clear, Mr. Thorne. Aura and Rian are under my protective umbrella now. Any attempt to contact them, to approach them, to so much as transmit their designations, will be regarded as a personal offense to me." His smile was all teeth. "And I process personal offenses with extreme prejudice." Jax's face transitioned from pale to red, anger overriding his initial fear. "You cannot simply acquire my family." "Your family," she interrupted, anger surging through her. "You relinquished the right to employ that designation the moment you initiated physical compromise against me." "Aura, be reasonable," Rykard Thorne interjected. "Jax made an error, one he has paid for." But retaining a father from his child is a necessary precaution when the father is violent, Vector concluded for him. His voice remained pleasant, but his optics had gone cold. Now, gentlemen, my fiancée and I have other guests to acknowledge. I trust our understanding is mutual. Without awaiting a reply, Vector guided her away, his hand firm at her back. She could feel Jax's gaze burning into her as they moved through the crowd. Breathe, Aura, Vector reminded her as they reached a quieter Vector. You executed the role perfectly. She realized she had been holding her breath, exhaling shakily, her hands trembling again. You exposed him in front of his father, his associates. I did. Vector signaled a waiter who brought a glass of purified water, pressing it into her hands. Consume. She obeyed. What is the next phase? Next phase. Vector checked his internal clock. Now we remain for 30 additional minutes. Sufficient duration to be observed. Then we depart. And tomorrow Jax won't simply concede. No, Vector agreed, his expression thoughtful. He won't. But he will operate with greater caution now, more subtlety. Which implies we continue the protocol as planned. You remain under my protective umbrella in my residence. We maintain the engagement fabrication until the thorns are no longer a threat. She nodded, the mass of her new reality settling over her. For better or worse, her fate was now synced with Vector Kale's. 2 weeks elapsed in a surreal blur of system adjustment and fabrication. Aura learned to navigate the complex without spatial disorientation, to respond instinctively when Vector introduced her as his fiancée, to dress and execute the role of a syndicate lord's chosen companion. Rian flourished under Sophie's care, and she found unexpected comfort in the security of Vector's complex, where enforcers patrolled the perimeter and every access point was monitored. Jax hadn't attempted direct contact since the gala, but Vector's data sources reported he was running inquiries. Only the shield of Vector's designation and reputation kept Jax at bay, a factor that both relieved and troubled her. Vector himself remained an enigma. He was consistently polite, solicitous of her comfort and Rian's well-being, but maintained a careful distance. Tonight, she sat in the diagnostic library, a data chip open but unread on her lap. Vector had been absent since morning, tending to a complication. The library door opened and Vector entered, loosening his tie. You are still active, he observed, pouring whiskey into a crystal tumbler. Long operation cycle? She queried. One could state that. Anything I should be concerned about? Vector observed her over the rim of his glass. Concerned for me, Aura? How touching. Concerned for our arrangement. For Rian's stability. Rian is absolutely secure, Vector assured her. A silence fell. After a moment, Vector transmitted again. There is a function tomorrow, cycle. A dinner at the State Executive Mansion. I desire your accompaniment. She tensed. Will the Thorns be present? Possibly. Rykard is a significant financier of the governor's campaign. Vector set his glass down. Is that problematic? No, she stated quickly. I merely prefer to be pre-programmed. Vector leaned forward. Analyze him for me. Not his actions toward you. I possess that data. Analyze how you met, how it initiated. She sighed. It's a cliché, truly. Low-status female meets high-status male. He elevates her status. Specifics, Aura. I was contracted at New Manhattan General night shift in the NICU. Jax arrived with an associate. He was attentive, generous. Later, I processed those transmissions were not affection, they were control. When did he first initiate physical compromise? The bluntness of the query made her flinch. After we were engaged, I went to a meal interface with a male colleague. Jax detected us. That night he struck me. She touched her cheek. By then I was anchor pregnant, trapped, or so I believed. The life support incident, Vector stated. What precipitated that event? I accessed evidence he was illegally diverting funds from his family's corporate foundation. I threatened to transmit the data to his father. That's when her voice failed. I do not recall much after the initial impact, just the descent, then waking in the medical center with fractured ribs. Vector's expression had hardened, and yet, despite all that, his family still endorses him. Capital protects its own, she stated. Vector stood, moving to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands. Process this, Aura. Jax Thorne will never initiate contact with you again. I guarantee that. What protocol are you executing? Nothing you need to be concerned with. Just comprehend that you are secure now. Permanently. She caught his wrist. Vector. No compromise protocol, please. You are requesting a documented syndicate entity to adhere to standard protocols? I am requesting the entity who has demonstrated only benevolence toward me to not become a perpetrator on my behalf. Vector inclined his head. As you command. Jax Thorne will remain physically uncompromised, though his corporate standing may not fare as successfully. Thank you for sharing your data, Vector said, stepping back. Initiate rest cycle. The transport will be ready at 1900 hours tomorrow evening. The state executive mansion was even more imposing than Vector's complex. As their vehicle pulled up, Aura adjusted the emerald pendant. Anxious? Vector queried. Marginally. He reached across the seat, straightening her blazer. You are executing it remarkably well. Remember, tonight is about strategic networking. Augur opened the door, and Vector exited first. Inside, the mansion pulsed with the controlled energy of powerful entities. Vector guided her through the crowd. Vector Kale. Governor Matthews boomed. And this must be the fiancé everyone is discussing. Vector's arm slipped around her waist. Aura Vance, Governor Matthews. A pleasure, my dear. You've achieved the impossible, getting this one to attend social functions. She possesses persuasive capabilities, Vector replied smoothly. Listen, Vector, a private transmission. That matter we discussed on the network. Vector hesitated. Perhaps later, Governor. I do not wish to leave Aura isolated just yet. Nonsense, the governor insisted. My wife will provide companionship. Vector's grip on her waist tightened. Very well. 5 minutes. He pressed his lips to her cheek. I will maintain close proximity, he murmured. The governor's wife arrived moments later, regarding her with polite disinterest. Miss Vance, she said, the governor informs me you were previously a bioengineer. Yes. Neonatal intensive care specialization. How altruistic, she stated in a dismissive tone. Excuse me a moment. She departed, leaving Aura isolated. Aura. The voice froze her. Jack stood behind her. You shouldn't be transmitting to me, she said without rotating. There is a restriction order, which does not apply at public functions. Jax countered, moving beside her. I merely desire to transmit data concerning our son. My son? You cannot deny him his father permanently, Aura. Watch me, she stated, finally rotating. This engagement to Kale. It is a fabrication, isn't it? Jax hissed. You possess no data concerning my relationship with Vector. I possess data that you have relocated my son into the facility of a documented syndicate entity. What the family court judge will transmit when I petition for emergency custody. Go ahead. Initiate the petition. Explain to the judge why you violated a restriction order. Why you possess 3 domestic compromise reports in your history. Why you attempted to shut down your pregnant fiancé's life support system. Jax's face flushed. No entity will credit your transmission over mine. Is there a destabilization event here? Augur appeared suddenly at her side. Miss Vance, Augur said, ignoring Jax. Mr. Kale requested I escort you to the East Terrace. Relief flooded her. She nodded, turning away from Jax. On the terrace, she inhaled the cool night air. You managed that interaction well. Vector approached, his expression dark. Augur transmitted the instant Thorn approached you. Jax mentioned petitioning for emergency custody of Rian. Let him attempt. My legal unit is already constructing a counter-protocol that would dismantle him. The restriction order, the medical center reports, all of it admissible in family court. You have been preparing for this contingency? Naturally. I informed you, Aura. You and Rian are under my protective umbrella now. Why? She queried finally. The authentic data Vector. Vector was silent. When I was 8 cycles old, my father terminated my mother. The statement was shocking. I witnessed it. Initiated no action. I was a child. I am deeply sorry. I made a vow that cycle, that I would shield those who could not shield themselves. Even if you had to violate other protocols to execute it, she stated softly. Even then. Thank you for sharing that data. For assisting us. Vector reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. We should return inside. His communicator buzzed, his expression darkening. We must depart now. Augur just received data that an entity attempted to breach the vault complex security. Vector guided her toward the doors. Rian is secure. They never gained proximity. But I desire immediate return. In the security monitoring room, Vector watched Augur replay the footage. A shadowy figure scaled the wall near the east wing, Miss Vance's quarters. The timing suggests prior data of our absence, Vector stated. Relocate them to my wing tonight. Within hours, her belongings were moved to a suite adjacent to Vector's private quarters. A connecting door firmly closed. Vector entered her module later. We have identified the security compromise, he transmitted. One of the culinary staff was approached 3 cycles ago. Offered 10,000 credits for data concerning your location. Who approached them? An entity operating on Jax's behalf. The staff member has been addressed. What is the next phase? Now we terminate this conflict, Vector stated. I have been patient, but he has escalated the situation by targeting my residence, endangering my family. What protocol are you executing? Nothing illegal. As per your request, do you still possess the evidence of his illegal fund diversion? Yes. In a secure data vault in another city cluster. I require access to it. She hesitated, then nodded. I will transmit the access codes tomorrow. Good. One further directive. We need to elevate our engagement's visibility. A formal engagement function here at the Vault Complex. Invite the city cluster's elite. You dislike public functions. I do, but it establishes legitimacy. Makes our connection appear more authentic. It is not authentic, she reminded him. Reality is perception, Aura, he stated. And our perception must be flawless. When? She asked, conceding. Next Saturday. Vector reached out, brushing his knuckles across her cheek. Initiate rest cycle. Augur will accompany you to the data vault tomorrow. The next 3 cycles were a blur of preparation. The vault complex was transformed for the party. Aura handed the fund diversion files to Augur. Saturday evening arrived. The gown Vector selected was a deep emerald. Sophie brought Rian down for digital records. Vector's expression softened when he saw them. You project exquisite presence, Aura. He reached for Rian, holding him easily. The photographer is awaiting in the library. Just a few records for the corporate pages. The records were taken. Vector produced a velvet case, fastening an emerald necklace around her neck. Now you are perfect. Their optics met in the mirror, acknowledging the strange intimacy. The first guests arrived. Aura executed her role flawlessly. Midway through, Vector stiffened. Rykard Thorne and his wife had accessed the facility. I did not issue them access, Vector murmured. He guided her toward them. Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, what an anomaly. We felt we should pay our respects, Rykard said. Though I do not recall transmitting an invitation. The governor mentioned it. We are long-term associates. I was hoping for a private transmission. A matter of significant urgency. Perhaps my office would be more suitable, Vector conceded. He kissed Aura's cheek. Augur will remain with you. This will be brief. Mrs. Thorne regarded Aura with thinly veiled hostility. You have certainly landed well, haven't you? From bioengineer to syndicate paramour. I comprehend your distress, Aura said. But you have destroyed my son's life, she hissed. Augur materialized. Perhaps some fresh ionization would benefit you, Miss Vance. He guided her to the terrace. Vector emerged shortly after. Rykard Thorne has agreed to retract his family's opposition to your custody of Rian. She stared in disbelief. Just like that? Why would he agree? Because the alternative is a federal inquiry into the family foundation, Vector interrupted. The evidence you preserved was comprehensive. Jax will be departing the system cluster tomorrow. An extended posting at the London sector office. He is surrendering all parental rights to Rian. Tears welled in her optics. Thank you. I can never compensate for this. Vector reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. Compensation is unnecessary. What is the next phase? She queried finally. With us. This arrangement, the engagement. That depends, Vector stated, on whether it is still merely an arrangement to you. He stepped closer. I am articulating that what initiated as pretense has evolved into something else. For me at least. Something else, she echoed. Vector's hand ascended to cup her face. The query is, has it evolved into something else for you too? It has, she admitted. But I am afraid. Of me? Of us. Of what happens when the novelty dissipates. Vector's eyes held hers. I possess full data on who you are, Aura. I have processed your resilience. And Rian is the simplest part of the equation. I possess deep affection for that boy. I would shield him with my existence, irrespective of whether there is an us or not. I desire to attempt it, she said softly, for authentic terms this cycle. Not for display, not for protection, merely that. Joy transformed Vector's expression. He leaned forward, his lips finding hers. It was the initial authentic kiss. When they broke contact, Vector smiled. We should return to our guests. Do we have to? She asked. Unfortunately, yes. Just a brief duration longer. Then they will depart, and we can initiate the authentic celebration, which is the commencement of our authentic engagement. He kissed her again. As you wish. As they returned to the ballroom, Vector's arm around her waist felt genuinely protective. Mrs. Thorne watched them, her expression sour. Later, after the last guest departed, Vector and she stood on his private balcony. No regret, Data? He asked softly. None. You rescued us, Vector. You rescued yourself, he countered. I merely provided resources and protection, and somewhere in the process, affection. Affection, she teased. Vector laughed. I know. I have known since that initial gala when you confronted Jax without recoiling. When I processed, I would dismantle the entire sector to maintain your stability. As they lay together in Vector's module, she processed the strange trajectory that had led her here. Sleep, Aura, he murmured. Tomorrow is the initial cycle of our authentic life together. The charade was terminated. What remained was something neither of them had planned, but both of them had located. Affection in the most unexpected spatial location. No longer his support staffer, no longer his fabricated fiancé, but truly his partner. And he no longer her protector by protocol but by choice, by affection.